In sports, the scoreboard doesn't tell the full story, but Netflix does. Stories about dads who happen to be world-class quarterbacks and a battle for the heart, soul, and direction of the multi-billion-dollar business of F1. Whether you're a diehard fan or you're brand new, Netflix has the stories for every type of fan. You can watch these incredible sports stories like Quarterback, F1 Drive to Survive, Untold, and many more now on Netflix.
Apple Card is the credit card created by Apple. You earn 3% daily cash back up front when you use it to buy a new iPhone 15, AirPods, or any products at Apple. And you can automatically grow your daily cash at 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a high-yield savings account. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings accounts by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, member FDIC. Terms apply.
Need a holiday gift that will keep her sparkling all year long? Right now, Blue Nile, the original online jeweler, is offering 30% off select jewelry. With experts on hand 24/7 to provide guidance, you're sure to find the perfect piece. And now there's even more to love about shopping at BlueNile.com. For a limited time, get 36-month special financing on minimum purchases of $1,000. Restrictions apply. See BlueNile.com for details. That's BlueNile.com.
Serie A Chronicles is a Mina and Chronicles production.
Welcome to the Serie A Chronicles podcast with me, Mina Rizuki, and of course, I'm joined by none other than Nicky Bandini. How are you, Nicky?
I'm good, Mina. I'm good. I'm very tired. I'm going through a slightly stressful last bit of trying to buy a flat. We're getting very, very close. We're not there yet.
God, it's been a while, hasn't it?
It has. Oh my God, Mina. I can't. We could do several podcasts on the dramatics of my flat purchase, but that would be quite a sort of boring thing for most people. And I feel very entitled talking about it because being in a position to buy a flat nowadays is no small thing, even if the bank will own a good chunk of it. I think you had a more exciting looking weekend, frankly. I've seen pictures of you, pictures from you looking somewhere very sunny this weekend.
Yeah, I went to, I'm a little bit actually sick now. It's not COVID, I tested, because I'm not allowed back in the country if I have it. But I went away to, I don't know how to pronounce it, Rovinj in Croatia. So check out, I have to fly for 2 hours, easy, right? Yeah. Land in Zagreb. Then it's a 3-hour drive from Zagreb. So all in all, it was like 7 hours travel with like taxis to the hotel or whatever. Yeah. I was exhausted to be there for like 48 hours. I mean, Ronaldo is no longer in Serie A. I'm still doing speeches about this guy and the effect that he's had. Yeah. I'm almost like, is there anyone else? I got sick coming back yesterday. Coming back to, I don't even know what today is or yesterday or whatever it is, but coming back today, watching all the games on stream, which is a terrible thing to do because it's like awful. But it was a great roundup of games that we're going to have to go into, Nicky.
I actually really empathise with your sort of not knowing what day it was because Serie A, in their wisdom, have wanted us to sort of have a greater spread of games through the week, which I admire. I understand what they're doing. It's all clever, I'm sure, for marketing and getting different countries, more people able to watch. But my God, when you have the previous round that ends on a Monday and then the new round starts on a Tuesday and goes through to Thursday with games at 2 different times in the evening, then the next round starts on a Saturday. You're like, where in the week am I? I could be any day of the week now. There's just all of the football all the time. But as a counterpoint to that, people are going to start thinking that I'm just like here pumping the league up because it's like good for business. And it's a lie. Like I will say when things are shit. Right now, Serie A is heaps of fun. It really is so much fun, some of these games. And I mean, I guess we've got to start off by talking about the derby, don't we?
Well, I think we have to talk about the derby, mostly because of Mourinho's reaction, or at least that was my favourite part of it. And here's the thing, yeah, because I also sometimes will have a cheeky bet on a game if I'm excited about it. Yeah, I never put more than £5 or £10 on a game. But isn't it just like Lazio to just go against the order of the day and be the one that does something that totally shocks you? Just before we get into it, I'm going to give you guys a roundup. We are going to talk Milan. We are going to talk, obviously, about that amazing match between Inter and Atalanta. Juventus are finally winning, albeit very narrow wins. So we're going to go through all of that. But we'll start off with the huge Derby della Capitale. And we'll start off with, I don't know, Nicky, what do you think? Do you think Maurizio Sarri deserved that win? Or did you think that was a Lazio win done on Inzaghi's football?
I really don't know. I think that it's so tempting, isn't it? It's a derby, narratives. Where's my overarching story of where these two teams are headed? I won't be shocked if Lazio lose the next 2 games after this. I don't think it's that sort of game, honestly, where I take these sort of takeaways from it and that's told me everything. But I enjoyed how much everyone played their part. Like Mourinho, as you were just sort of alluding to, comes out of the game and it's the grand injustice. The referee stole it from us, just like the referee in midweek who got Pellegrini suspended. And frankly, a lot of his complaints were not ill-founded. They were all right. We'll get into that. But I just love that as a counterpoint to Maurizio Sarri, who before the game is telling people, oh, I'm not stressed out. I found it more stressful when I was coaching San Giovanese against Montevarchi in Serie A. And you just think, my God, these two are caricatures. They're caricatures of themselves.
Well, yeah, here's the thing. Did you think that potentially that Mourinho was doing this to sort of get Roma fans on board? It was really funny because when I asked you that first question about whether or not Sarri, deserved it, our producer, who is a Roma fan, is really shaking his head. I mean, no, they didn't. Absolutely not.
Poor producer Simon.
But and I don't know whether that's a biased opinion or not, but Mourinho, and here's the thing, I feel like he always loses some of these actually big derbies. He lost when he was at Inter against Milan, he lost to Barcelona when he was with Real Madrid, the first one, and then he figures out ways of basically destroying the opponent eventually. And a lot of people will say they don't necessarily deserve to lose this one because Gazzetta dello Sport is of that opinion. But for me, I thought that Lazio just showed a lot of variation in their tactics. And I love the fact that they are supposed to be a possession team, but played this amazing counter-attacking football. That did you not think Mourinho was saying sort of, their goals were counter-attacks. And he was looking down on it. I'm like, you're the master of counter-attacks. You went to Real Madrid and perfected the 13-second counter-attack. So why are you looking down on it? Is this just a show, or do you think he's genuinely upset?
No, look, it's Jose, Mina. It's literally always a show. It's only ever been a show. I imagine that when he was 5 years old at home, it was a big show about who just sort of, I don't know, spilled something in the cat's bowl or something. There was always probably a misdirection and a trick, because it's always this. And the end of game narrative, which I was talking about, where it's, we should have had a penalty. I think they probably should have had a penalty with that before the second Lazio goal. Looking at it more, I think Zaniolo was fouled. Doesn't mention the fact that they got a penalty later, which
that wasn't deserved.
If anything, Zaniolo committed the foul.
Thank you.
So it's always a show and misdirection with Mourinho. I thought the game was just, I don't know. I don't know how you feel about this. I thought it was. This is why I didn't want to give a sweeping judgment on it. It was bits and pieces. In parts, Lazio were brilliant. Lazio's goals were brilliant. And I thought the first one out of all of them maybe had a bit of Inzaghi with a bit of Sarri, because yes, it was a counter-attack, but it also had a beautiful passing triangle. How obsessed were we in the first Napoli experience of Sarri with the passing triangles? This was a beautiful passing triangle between Milinkovic-Savic, I think it was Immobile and Felipe Anderson that set up that goal. So I give that one a bit from both of them. The other two goals, as far as I'm concerned, were Inzaghi goals, if I'm being honest. I think they were.
What, Pedro's goals?
Well, Pedro's goal and then
Anderson's goal at the end.
Yes, Felipe Anderson's goal, because they were Immobile breakaways, and both times I thought really selfless play from Immobile. But
selfless, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how you felt about that.
Firstly, I don't know why, but Immobile gets so much flack with the national team that sometimes when I am sort of in the zone of watching the Azzurri, I end up sort of like disliking him a lot. And then I see these performances from him and I think, firstly, he has a lot of pace for somebody that's over 30. The way that he just outruns everyone, like he did for that third goal and delivered so unselfishly. It was so smart. He was so good with his feet. And I just think you are a very good player. It's obviously, this is the kind of play that suits you. You're not always going to be the person that, he's no Osimhen, right? But who is at the moment? But I guess the reason why I felt that Lazio deserved it, and now, even though I think it's a close contest, I really love watching Roma at the moment. So I'm so sorry to our producer, but it is a case of when I look at what Lazio produced, I thought there was more of a unity between the front three, between like Pedro, Anderson and Immobile. I felt like everyone was on board, Milinkovic-Savic. It was just a lot more sort of understanding between it all. Whereas I thought a lot of the time there wasn't clear attacking schemes from Roma. It's kind of a lot of, set pieces, corners, let's try to make something out of it. Zaniolo falling, potentially getting penalties. I don't see any clear ideas going forward when Pellegrini is not obvious. I mean, I tweeted it out, but I don't know if you agree with that, but I don't necessarily. It's kind of the issue that he's always been criticized for, right? There isn't a clear scheme where you do think sometimes when you watch Lazio, you kind of see what they're doing up front.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, some of what Lazio are doing, you ask yourself, is this really Sarri's work or is it old Inzaghi? Because I think a lot of that stuff that built from the back was also, or those quick counters even, start with Luis Alberto dropping into really smart positions, which he was always brilliant at under Inzaghi. Yeah. And I think that Roma do not have anything like that sort of cohesiveness. In the end, a lot of Roma's best chances came from set pieces, which they are looking good at, and that's something that Mourinho has obviously worked on. Yeah, Pellegrini was a huge loss. Pellegrini is very clearly, I think Mourinho has done this over and over again in his career. Pellegrini is one of the sort of absolutely key players that Mourinho has said, I'm going to make you at the center of everything. You're going to be my Wesley Sneijder. You're going to be put my stamp on you. You're going to feel like I support you 1,000,000%, and you're going to be brilliant. And taking that out, it felt like a lot of the plan in this game was get the ball to Zaniolo and let him be really good, which he is. He's really good. But it doesn't work as a plan. Whereas Lazio's plan, maybe it was still not totally clear. Maybe it was a bit of Sarri, a bit of Inzaghi. I don't want to completely do down Sarri, by the way. I'll talk about that in a second. But it was a plan, which Roma, to me, didn't really have a plan.
Yeah, I think that's where I agree with you. And actually, I do want to speak about, because you mentioned Zaniolo, because the plan does seem, and he seemed to be the driving force behind the team in the absence of Pellegrini. He is obviously very talented. It's remarkable that he's come back from these 2 knee surgeries and really is a player that is so outrageously beautiful to watch on the pitch. God, I'm so excited for the World Cup. Him and Pellegrini as well, added to that team.
Aren't you? I'm the same. The young Italians in Serie A this season are wild. We'll get on to Barella at some point as well. It's been a wild start.
What a performance from him as well. Pessina as well in that game. Anyway, sorry. But just before that, are you a little bit worried about... I know he's amazing on the pitch, but off the pitch, obviously, there was like a video of him sort of signaling, I know the emotions are very big in a derby and stuff. But do you not think sometimes, like the falling over to get penalties, the way that he is in social media, that I'm not sure his attitude is the right one. Like when I hear sometimes like Anguissa talk for Napoli or these other players that are talking like, the younger kids, I feel like maybe Zaniolo's a little bit like, yeah, and what? Yeah, and you know who I am sort of. I don't know. It's a little bit, it's bothering me. And I feel like he's so good. So he's allowed to do this as long as he's good, But there was a part of me that's kind of like, pipe down and just, like be a lovable human for a second.
It's an interesting take. For those people who missed it, it's at the end of the game as he was coming off, Zaniolo sort of made a gesture, grabbing at his crotch, I guess, towards some of the Lazio supporters. They
were hurling insults, so I get it. Like there are emotions, yeah.
Yeah. I think what's interesting about that to me, actually, and I do think you've sort of touched on something there, which I hadn't really thought about, and I think it's a really interesting thought, because again, if you want to contrast with some of those other young Italian players we're excited about, I think Barella, Chiesa, Pellegrini, they're players who have competitiveness, they've got fury, they've got flaws as well, but I'm not sure any of them feel quite as uncontrolled as Zaniolo. And look, Zaniolo's missed a lot of football in the last couple of years, so maybe it's just about he needs some more time to be on the pitch and to get that sense of control back. But then a little part of me, as you were saying that, Mina, like the little sort of devil on my shoulders, like, yeah, and is Mourinho coming out and saying we're at war with everyone actually what he needs to hear right now? Or does he need someone saying to him, all right, sunshine,
pipe down,
a little bit of order here, please?
I mean, that was just like the perfect comment. Yeah, like really the perfect comment, because Zaniolo is already sort of like, he reminds me a little bit of Pepe from Real Madrid, you know, and like that kind of guy. Okay, maybe he's not as annoying as Pepe, yeah, but that kind of guy that's always really worked up, really trying to prove himself, like really like, yeah, and like Doma when he like scores a goal. I mean, I'm speaking Spanish, but you know what I mean, like that kind of guy. And you sort of want him to be coached by maybe Stefano Pioli, who'll be like pipe down and like, Pioli. You know, like have some yeah. What did I say? Did I say something? Pioli.
No, you said Pioli. I'm just agreeing.
I did. Okay.
Sorry, I'm an echo.
Saying I was worried I said something else. You know, having a bit of humility, like understanding that, you know, like don't worry about this stuff, be a leader, be the guy, you know. And instead, it's like he's got this Mourinho who's going to play to that, right? Because he loves that side of things. And I wonder whether it will get out of hand and Mancini will have issue with it, or other people might have an issue with it, you know, because he might reckon himself too much eventually. It's just him. Like, I'm just kind of like want to rein him back in, because a lot of people are talking about Mbappe. I think it's unfair to talk about Mbappe. And I don't want Zaniolo to sort of fall into that same level of attitude, you know, because there isn't a Neymar that's spoiling him. So
I think it's a really interesting point. And I think it's a really interesting point more broadly about the identities of these two clubs. And I say this again, like, I'm not saying that one's better than the other. I just think it's a fascinating contrast that is being, I think it's almost actually like the pre-existing identities that these clubs have within Rome is being reinforced by these two slightly extreme personalities that the managers, because Mourinho is all bombast and drama and citing philosophers in his press conferences, and Sarri is, to the point of parody, this sort of like, oh, well, you know, back when I was in the third division, and like Sarri, like if you sort of listen to what's being reported in the media in Rome, like he's gone there, he's basically moved into Formello, the training ground. His wife has moved to Rome with him, but as I understand it, she's not like there because she's got like an actual home. But he doesn't go home; he just works. He just stays there and he works and he works and he works. And it's this sort of ridiculous, sort of Spartan obsession about him. And I don't know if it's going to get them the answers they want, actually, because I don't think this game tells me that Sarri is suddenly on the right track. But I just think there's this sort of, I don't know, this dueling ideal between the two Rome clubs that I find intoxicating, actually, to watch. I really enjoyed this derby. I enjoyed it a lot. I imagine if you supported one of those teams, it would have been stressful and different. But as someone who's sat there with their bucket of popcorn, I thought it was great.
Yeah, especially after, like, you know, derbies that had Petkovic and whatever. I do want to say that in Formella, do you know who his next door neighbor is? It's Olympia, the eagle. So that's why he said, yes, I was so happy to celebrate with her. Let's move on to the other huge match that if you didn't watch, oh my God, did you miss out? But what do you think it is, Nicky?
Oh my goodness. Do you know what I mean? Like, I genuinely think there's a few different games that you could be talking about. Yeah, that is true, actually. Yeah. But you're probably talking about Inter Atalanta.
Yeah, I am.
Va a partire l'Inter, il cross per Lautaro Martínez. Ha segnato l'Inter. Un gol pazzesco del Toro che porta in vantaggio i campioni d'Italia al quinto minuto. Nel corso del primo tempo il cross che è arrivato da destra, la girata al volo di Lautaro Martínez.
It is indeed. Inter and Atalanta is the next match, because it was, oh my God, super exciting, super crazy. And Nicky, you said that I don't want to draw conclusions from the derby because it is a very emotional game and things can maybe change that. But can you draw any conclusions from Atalanta's performance, for example, or Inter's for that matter?
I think you can get more conclusions from these games because there are some continuations of a trend. I think we are seeing an Inter that is more open than Antonio Conte's Inter so far.
Yeah.
With sort of ups and downs attached to that. I think we are seeing some sort of specifics in the nuance of it, in the way that we see Lautaro now interpreting that number 9 role, which is really exciting. And on the other side of it, we can see that Atalanta's sort of resilience and quality is perhaps more than I'd given them credit for earlier in the season. I think I can't not start with Lautaro and the season he's having. I mean, I'm going to start with Lautaro anyway,
Okay.
just because this was the big conversation, right? Lukaku is gone, and my God, number 1 goal scorer, number 1 assist provider, he's gone. Where will the leadership come from? Where will the sort of impetus come from? And it's there. Lautaro is, it was a brilliant goal he scored, the first one. I thought the cross from Barella was a tiny bit behind him. He just changed his body and volleyed it, top corner. He's so technically good, Mina. I don't want to, the problem is, I don't know if you feel like this, the problem is as soon as you have these conversations, it's I have to put him in opposition with Lukaku. And it's not like that. Lukaku was brilliant. He won the league and now he's gone. But Lautaro is brilliant in a different way.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think that he's grown massively since the departure of Lukaku. Maybe because it is Inzaghi's sort of game plan, which means and sees them higher up the pitch. Maybe because there are more sort of, solutions, like they like to say in Italian, for scoring a goal. Or maybe he just really enjoys being the main man. I can't figure out what it is, but what's interesting is that I'll watch Çalhanoğlu. I'll be amazed by some of his performances, and then something happens and he just disappears for the rest of the match. He is still the inconsistent player that we saw from Milan. He was good for the first 20 minutes, and then he was good in the first match, but sometimes you just feel like he doesn't have the vertical push that perhaps Eriksen could provide. He can't direct the game and help out Brozovic. He's sort of in this little bubble where if you let him do his thing, he'll dazzle you. But if you don't let him do his thing, he doesn't know how else to give something to the team, to provide something else, because I don't know what exactly it is that he wants to do. Because I felt like towards the end of the match, he disappeared. And more than anything, I know that we've lost Achraf Hakimi and I know that we've lost Lukaku, but Dumfries is so exciting to watch. Lautaro Martínez is really enjoying himself. Dzeko is proving to be amazing as well, really acclimatized to the situation, but he's a veteran, But I feel like the Eriksen factor with Çalhanoğlu is probably the thing that is the difference between now and last year.
Yeah, I do agree. I think it's a fundamental shift in how you interpret that midfield, because Eriksen was never really sitting in these sort of trequartista space. Well, he was at the beginning and it didn't work. But he wasn't sitting in that trequartista space by the time it worked for him at Inter. He was sitting in this hybrid regista mezzala space. And Çalhanoğlu is further forward than that. Çalhanoğlu is in a more advanced role than that. And it's shifting the whole... I never know, this is one of those ridiculous things, because English is my first language and Italian is my second language, right? But sometimes there are words in a footballing context I don't know how to properly port across. Like in Italy, they talk all the time about baricentro, like the baricentro della squadra, which is the sort of median point on the pitch which the team occupies. And I'm pretty certain, without looking at the numbers, I'm sorry I haven't checked them, that Inzaghi has dragged the baricentro forward, right? They have moved their
center of gravity.
Their center. Yes, exactly. The center of gravity. That's a good way of translating it. And I think Çalhanoğlu is an important part of that. I think probably the way that Lautaro plays up front is part of that, because there's less, not that this was the main way of it happening, but there's just less of centre forwards coming back to get the ball and more of them asking for it in behind than there was before, I think. Which again, very Inzaghi, that's what his Lazio teams do. And I think these sort of tactical shifts being made by Inzaghi are perhaps combining with the nature of the players at his disposal as well. And without wanting to drag you back off Çalhanoğlu and back to Lautaro, I do find that dynamic of him being sort of the man really interesting, because I remember when having sort of that moment when fans of football fan friends of mine who didn't watch Italian football were seeing him in the Champions League for the first time and going, oh, he's a number 10 and Lukaku's number 9. Like, he's not a number 10. He's a number 9. He's just kind of got to work off this other number 9 because there's two of them. So, yeah, I think those things are probably all combining a bit to drag this team forward in a slightly different way.
Well, I think that's what makes it so interesting, is that it is the higher center of gravity. It is the unpredictability of the way that they move. There's a lot of talk about their mentality. Is it as tough as it used to be, right? But that's because they're not really a team that scores a goal and closes down to protect itself either, And so,
do you think it's a little bit pazza intero? Is it pazza intero?
Well, this is what they're doing. And firstly, I do think that Handanovic is a little bit more pazza this season than last season. Yeah. Where he has moments of like, oh, wow, that was great. And oh, wow, well, that was awful. I mean, his error sort of atoned for the fact that Atalanta didn't get their third goal as well, Error covered up the other error, if that makes sense. But it's if you want to be a side that's more predictable or unpredictable, having those performances in the Champions League, being a side that can actually score goals or do something different, across the board, I think it's a higher level of an attacking scheme right now. It's more nuanced. Everyone is getting involved. Look at how many different goal scorers there are. It's not a side that's dependent on, let's hope Bastoni gets a long ball towards Lukaku. Let's see if he can, hold it up, either deliver a pass or score himself, I think there is an element of that means the back line is going to be under a little bit more pressure. And actually, when you look at the stats right now, they conceded around 10.2 shots on goal last season. Now it's closer to 12.5. I mean, it's still very early, so we don't want to draw too many conclusions. But if you remember last season, I mean, how bad were Inter in the beginning as well on a defensive level. And at the time, it seemed like Conte wanted to take those sacrifices to improve the attacking play, to ensure that it's a lot of fun there. But for once, can I just say that, because I'm always kind of harsh on Inzaghi on his substitutions, I thought that they were amazing this time round. And I thought if anyone buried himself with the substitution, he didn't bury himself, but I was a little upset with the way that Gasperini handled it, So I thought it was so good.
I mean, they nearly won the game. They had that goal disallowed at the end.
They did. But Di Marco could have scored that penalty too. So I think actually 2-2 is very fair, if that makes sense. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. No, I think 2-2 was reflective of the game. I can understand Inter being more frustrated because they're at home, because they had the penalty, but I think 2-2 was quite reflective.
And Atalanta back, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was, I don't know, there's some really exciting individual performances in there. I think Atalanta, who I was sceptical of at the start of the season, I thought, is this finally going to be a tipping point? Then you watch Malinowski, brilliant goal we haven't mentioned, do things like that, and you think, actually, no, they're probably still fine. It's just Gasperini will find more solutions, as he always does. But on the other side, you've got Barella just being ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
I mean, Barella is
ridiculous.
I think Barella is my current football crush. I think there's always sort of different players you get obsessed with, and I think I'm quite obsessed with Barella at the moment. He's got 5 assists already this season, but just the way he plays football, and I think he's become so sort of quickly the heartbeat of that Inter team. But I don't know. I'm sort of to call it back to what you just said, Mina. I'm still, with every team almost, I'm still in this sort of mindset of it is 6 games, and there are going to be variances. There are going to be things that change. Last season, even at Inter, you had Conte for a while being like, oh, I don't know about this Milan Skriniar. I don't know if he fits in a back 3, and he ends up being brilliant, as we know he can be. So all of these things are still dynamics that are being worked out. If there is one dynamic that definitely needs to be worked out, though, it is Inter penalty takers, because they've had some terrible penalty takers in recent times.
Oh, I do feel sorry for. But I do want to mention Barella, because I think that he does deserve as much praise as possible. My crush is Pellegrini, so although Barella is swiftly getting up there right now, but he was on another level in this match, also because of the fact that he offers so much defensively as well. And that ability to then deliver an assist and to, perfect crosses, always understands his positioning, fights so hard, and also just never demands any of the glory. He's always the guy that wants to rush to cheer with everyone. He's not the one that sort of waits for the adjunct. I don't know. There's so much about Barella to love. I also think there's so much to love about Pessina. I want to talk about him as well, because having him alongside Malinowski behind Zapata, who's Zapata does a lot of sacrifices right now, the way that he's playing his game. And I find it, it's a very Gasperini Atalanta thing where people will sacrifice for the other. But that midfield that used to be so strong, I'm not sure it is, but having, those two guys, the sheer technical ability of Malinowski and the tactical ability of Pessina, I think is just like the world's wow, having that. Imagine if in midfield they had Anguissa and Fabian Ruiz. This would be the ridiculous team,
Wow.
But just having these little partnerships, I like seeing that,
It's funny you should mention those two. I think we should move on and talk about Napoli. I'll just say quickly, it's an international break coming up. So all these Italian midfielders, I think we should get a nice chat about those coming up with the international break, because I think Italy is so blessed right now in midfield. I think it's probably time, Mina, that we took a trip down to Naples to check in on the only team in Serie A with a perfect record, 6 wins from 6. Ridiculously, the way that the football calendar has been worked out, I guess partly because they were playing in the Europa League, they played 3 games last week from Monday to Sunday, so they didn't even sort of start Sunday to Sunday. They went Monday to Sunday, 3 games. They won all of them. They scored 10 goals and they didn't concede once. Now, this weekend was only Cagliari. Cagliari were beyond awful, zero ambition in that team whatsoever. But it's pretty impressive stuff from Spalletti's team right now, Mina. You like that? You like me trashing Cagliari, apparently.
I just like trashing anyone. It always makes me really laugh.
They were so bad. They were 1-0 down and trying to defend it. I hate it.
I mean, isn't that Walter Mazzari, though?
Walter Mazzari, yeah. Let's look after this 1-0 loss.
Yes, let's make sure that we don't get completely trashed, and yeah, Gazzetta still wants to trash on Allegri and not Mazzari. But anyway, that's a whole nother criticism for another day. Napoli, it doesn't help that a few weeks on our first episode of this podcast, I said I don't trust them. I still don't trust them. And I know that sounds ridiculous considering how unbelievable they are. But I will also draw on something that I said a long time ago in the predecessor of this podcast. And I said that I felt that if Spalletti had the team that Antonio Conte had in Inter, then I'm fairly certain that he would have also won the Scudetto. I mean, this was a guy that started the Inter project. I think he did really great work, to be honest. And he had a Mauro Icardi that was refusing to play because Inter didn't really want to have him on board. It was when Beppe Marotta had just come in and was trying to sort out the dressing room harmony. It was when Kendreva's wife was coming out and speaking about her wanting to leave, Paris wanting them to leave Inter. Perisic was upset. There was so much stuff for Spalletti to deal with. But as a tactician, he is truly, really one of the best, because in his Roma side, the initial one that had, Francesco Totti as a false number 9, was perhaps one of the greatest Roma sides ever. It is one that inspired Pep Guardiola. It is one that inspired Marcello Lippi's 2006. So him I trust. I'll go into Napoli, but I just want to talk about, I'm so glad that he got to have this opportunity and for everyone to look at him right now.
I have this in my head. Francesco Totti wrote an autobiography a couple of years ago in Italian. It's now coming out in English. I actually had the very great pleasure to speak to him recently, which will be coming out in The Guardian in the next week or 2. Ooh. So look out for that. But in this autobiography, he talks about Spalletti. And of course, there's a lot to talk about there. They have a whole relationship that at one point was amazing and at a later point got quite bad. So that's a story unto itself we don't need to get into. But there's just this sort of casual reference at one point, talking actually during the best part of Spalletti's time when Totti's very high on Spalletti's influence. But Totti's basically saying, this guy is crazy. And when I sort of talk about crazy, it's like, this is a manager who be one day they'll be at the training ground and he'll be running naked down the corridor. And you think,
what,
this is not normal.
Really?
This is not normal behaviour for a manager. Some things you're used to happening.
I would not have guessed that.
I think he's got a personality, Spalletti. And I think maybe, who knows, because there's been other strong personalities there before, but maybe a strong personality with a little bit of madness in it is what Naples, which is a city of strong personalities with a little bit of madness in them, maybe that's what we need.
It's funny because as a tactician, I think he's wonderful, but I've never known about his man management because it's actually one of the coaches I've never interviewed or sat with. So I don't know him on that level and what it's like to have man managers. And obviously you've heard a lot about what people have said about him. But the thing that I think that might be the key to Napoli is that the game plan. They seem to really like coaches who just entertain them with a game plan and they get to express themselves on the pitch. And then they don't need to be so disciplined and man managed, you know? And I think that's why they enjoyed themselves under Maurizio Sarri and did well, is because they could focus on that part of it rather than all the discipline and, you know, all of that came later. And maybe that's what they get to do with Spalletti. They're just so enjoying the different schemes, their ability to express themselves, that they're not lashing out, if that makes sense.
I think it's such a fascinating mix of personalities in Naples. And I know you've talked about this like a few times before, Mina, that in the end, you just don't trust them to have that sort of strength in the critical moments. And I would, you know, understand if that view is unchanged, because frankly, the 6 games they've played other than Juventus have mostly been slightly smaller clubs. There haven't been those big moments yet. For me, there's 2 things beyond Spalletti. I think Spalletti is definitely, as you say, a manager who, look, he's won the league with Zenit. He hasn't won Serie A yet, but I think he's capable of winning Serie A.
Yeah.
But beyond that, it's 2 players. I think Anguissa has had an immediate impact and is fascinating, his impact on that team. But above all, for me, it is still, they spent 70 million euros on a striker a summer ago. That striker was injured quite a lot in his first season at the club. We're now in his second season. He's had more time to integrate. Victor Osimhen is who I'm talking about, in case anyone hasn't picked it up yet. And so far this season, he's been brilliant. And so, yeah, if you've got a brilliant 70 million euro striker, your title chances should get better. And I think he's wonderful. He's not just scoring goals. He's really a technically astonishing player who I'm really enjoying watching.
He's technically astonishing. I think the way he positions himself. I also feel like he's like a hurricane. Like defending against him must be, he's constantly switched on. It's almost like he doesn't take a breath to relax for a second, you know? So imagine having to defend against him. I feel like I'd be exhausted. I'd be out there like asking for more like glucose in my system because he just knows how to overwhelm you and then uses his feet and he's so smart and he is so good. And right now, top scorer in Europe alongside Benzema. I know that him and Anguissa and Fabian Ruiz should be getting all the plaudits, and they are getting that and compliments to them. But I also want to slightly mention, because for a while now, I don't feel like Koulibaly has been Koulibaly. Yeah. And I did mention many times that I don't like his partnership with Manolas because I don't actually, and I've never really rated Manolas before, but for some reason when Napoli bought him, I was like, oh, wow, what a great purchase. You know, maybe because he's a big name. But actually having Koulibaly next to Rahmani has brought Koulibaly back, like to what we remember him, you know, the leader. Yeah. And I feel like Rahmani, you know, he is obviously a Juric disciple or at least trained under him, but he's been really amazing alongside him. And I think he's so calm on the ball. I think that he can play in any position, so he understands the different, you know, requirements. He knows what Koulibaly needs and what he can provide. And he's just sort of like the right soul to place alongside him. He's not fast. He's not necessarily got the organization of Albiol, but I think he just might be the exact guy next to him to bring out that defensive partnership that has obviously secured that back line. And I just wanted to highlight that.
Okay, Mina, we've talked about the top of the table. No longer scraping the bottom of the table, but resurgent, Mina, with 2 wins in 2 games. Juventus beat Sampdoria 3-2. It's all okay now, right? Juventus are back.
I don't know why, but when you're saying this, it just seems like even you're like, whatever, this is so not true. but I'm just going to give it to her and see what she does with it, you know?
Yeah. I'm actually genuinely curious because, look, I think I've always been, even if I'm not I like to prod a bit, but like because I'm not a Juventus fan, so I don't have the investment that you do. But I think I have shared some of your sense of, yeah, it'll come all right though. And now they have won a couple of games. I don't think it's all fixed and fine, but I'm curious to know what you think.
I don't think they're all fixed and fine because I think they're also error prone, right? And they can't seem to keep a clean sheet. I don't think that's necessarily important in this day and age anymore. But I also feel like everything's really nervy. It was a nervy watch against Spezia. It was nervy against Sampdoria when they can score goals and they were doing well. But there's always that moment where you just feel like anxiety takes over them and then you worry. And that's what I feel like the worry hasn't gone. And for so long, I was so used to watching Juventus with this sheer safety that this was Juventus. But they've lost that intimidating edge, which is actually something I wanted to say about Napoli, because I feel like a lot of games are dependent on psychology. I do really believe in that. But with Napoli right now, nobody wants to take them on. Everyone just wants to make sure that they're locked up and safe. And I wonder what will happen when teams actually a little bit more ambitious in their play and take them on. But with Juve, I just feel it's a case of there's a lot of chat about this game, about the fact that it was just Locatelli and Bentancur and whether that was better. And my takeaway from all of this match was that Sampdoria let themselves down. They were so open. It was a game in which you just felt like it was a free-for-all. So, of course, you could see the beauty of Locatelli in this match. Of course, it's wonderful that he had this partnership with Dybala, but no one was doing anything to try to stop them. Do you agree or not really?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually have had some I've had some feedback from Sampdoria fans this season. I'm not giving them enough credit. And you think, well, they did get walloped by Napoli, and then this game they played some good football coming forwards. And I don't know. I don't know what I make of Sampdoria right now. So they have done some good stuff going forward. It's odd to me that significant part of the good stuff coming forward is coming through the 34-year-old Antonio Candreva and the 34-year-old Ciccio Caputo. But there you go. That's football. Age is but a number, Mina. But I don't know. I think that Juventus certainly don't look stable at the back at all. They tried swapping Szczesny out and giving Mattia Perin a go, which I'm glad they did. I think they need to do that, but it didn't make a huge difference to how they look defensively. As a counterpoint to that, I felt like it was really encouraging to see Locatelli finally sort of take a handle in midfield. It was his best performance since going to Juventus for sure. And I thought that perhaps this was one of the first games where I felt like maybe Allegri said, you know what, like the old plan of sitting back and being good at defending isn't really working. So at least let's try to attack more because we're not that good at defending at the moment.
But I wish he would really do that because sometimes I feel like they're a bit in two minds about it. But I really think at this point you should do what Conte tried to do with Inter last season, which is, you know, in the beginning, just let loose because we clearly can't defend, you know?
Yeah, and I think I agree. And I think that you can say this too bluntly, right? Because when I talk about when I say what I'm about to say, like you can compare their squad to lots of teams in Serie A and abundantly the talent is better, right? But by the standards of Juventus, and specifically Juventus, who've won the league 9 times in a row, when I look at this squad, I think to myself, is the talent actually that good? Is it actually the sort of level of Juventus talent that we've thought about? And I think there are parts of the pitch where it is, and there are parts of the pitch where it isn't. And the parts of the pitch where it is, probably, or at least where you find they have the most options, is up front and sort of just behind the attack. So embrace that. Like, focus on what you have got that's good, because the center of the park is not great and it's not going to be fixed right now. The fullbacks even, I think, has been a position which is gradually, not even because they've changed players, but Alexandro and Juan Cuadrado are these really sort of the top European names that you want anymore. No, they're not. Sandro is years off where he's been at his best, and Cuadrado is such a warrior. Like, I really admire how hard he works, but it's not a Hakimi type figure who you think, wow, I'm excited about what's going to happen here. I think you've got to focus on what you do well, and hopefully, from Juventus' standpoint, certainly going into a big game against Chelsea in the Champions League, that's what they're trying to do. And I have to ask this question, Mina. I have to, because I know you've always been his biggest fan.
Yes, of
Paulo
course.
Dybala is going to miss that game against Chelsea, and how big of a blow do you think that is?
Well, this is something that upsets me, because I really did feel for him when I saw him sort of walking off. Like, you don't want to see anyone really cry, and you just feel like even he's fed up with the level of injuries that they've got, that he gets, you know. But it is difficult when you're sitting there demanding to be the highest paid in a team when you've never been there, consistently speaking, you know. You haven't been the star. You haven't been the guy that we can always rely on, a guarantee, like even Kessier is for Milan. Like, like Ibra's always injured, but there is just, it's a little bit like Sensi. He's so wonderful to watch, but he's just hardly ever there. And with Dybala, I'm just thinking to myself, I love the fact that on this occasion he was closer to Locatelli. You could see the brilliance of his play, and it's so annoying to score a goal like that, to have like everyone see the beauty of your play, and then once again, you know, something happens and you have to go off with a muscular injury. But this is kind of why I don't want to devote too much time with him, and I would like him to possibly look at different clubs, not because I don't think he's there, but on a mental level, it's taken him a really long time to show the brilliance of his play. And then when he does get it, he doesn't have the continuity because his body doesn't afford him that. I hope we see more, and then we can properly judge that. But without him and without Morata against Chelsea, I mean, this is going to be diabolical because they have an actually great defense. But I'd like to see what Kulusevski can do. I'm always going to trust in Chiesa, although I'd like him to still play a little bit more with the team and to stay higher up the pitch. I hate people having to move around or cover a lot of ground. But I also want to just kind of quickly talk about Sampdoria, because it's really bizarre, their performances. Because I'm a big fan of D'Aversa. I don't know why, because he's not usually the type of coach that I follow, but I love this Parma team. I love their performance against Empoli because I thought that they were tactically so flexible. They could be possession-based, they could be vertical, they were capable of going down the wings or through the middle or hold the ball or actually just really spring a fast counter-attack. But I've seen recently against Napoli, I've seen against Juventus, they let their head down and they don't fight when they feel there's a fight that needs to be had. And it's almost like it's that weird Napoli thing that I was talking about, like, just tackle, just throw yourself, just get a yellow card, you know? But it was kind of sometimes like a little bit like I saw from Cagliari sometimes. Like, we're going to lose this anyway, so what's the point? And that is something D'Aversa really needs to fix. But do you think Chelsea is going to be 3-0?
I think it's going to be a very, very tough game for Juventus against Chelsea. I don't think Juventus are anywhere near what they're capable of being right now, and Chelsea are playing pretty well. The other team we haven't got to yet that's in the Champions League from Italy, of course, is Milan. They won 2-1 away to Spezia. And very clearly the big headline from this game is Daniel Maldini, the third generation of Maldini after Cesare and then Paolo Maldini to play for Milan's first team. He had played for them before, but he made his first start and scored his first goal in a 2-1 win. He's 19 years old. Unlike his father and grandfather, who are both defenders, he's a centre forward or a number 10, really. I don't want to sort of do this thing where you sort of see this one thing and you build the whole narrative of it. He's still a teenager, but it's a cool story.
Yeah, it's a cool story. And maybe something I wrote on social media was maybe it was a blessing in disguise that they lost Çalhanoğlu, because now we're seeing Brahim Diaz do his thing and really shine. And then also when he's not playing, then you can see Daniel Maldini score and contribute to the dynasty.
Yeah. And I love that Pioli is the manager who does this. I think one of the things that, like, of course, everyone in football blows smoke sometimes. They say things that are just like flattery or whatever. But honestly, every one of these young players at Milan, whenever you read an interview with them, they're all talking about in specific terms, oh, Pioli gives me advice. Pioli comes to me. Pioli talks to me about my movements. Pioli. And same thing with Maldini. He scores this goal. Oh, Pioli's been doing this with me on the training ground. I think it's such a great dynamic they have there to have the chance to come through there. And, you know, let's be excited and also not put too much pressure on the kid, because he's a kid with a lot of weight on his shoulders already. I think you also had some strong feelings on the other side of this matchup, Mina and Thiago Motta.
Well, yeah, because I was saying to you before this match, and you always laugh when I say this, that I thought Thiago Motta was the worst coach in the world.
In the world.
In the world.
In a world where
awful.
Mazzari exists.
Yeah, Mazzari is so your point. You really dislike him. I felt like Gav really believed that way as well at the time.
Oh, I don't think Mazzari is the worst. I'm sure there's worse than Mazzari, but he does frustrate me. Drives me potty.
Yeah, Thiago Motta. It was Genoa that he was coach of, and I just thought, my God, sir, like nobody can hold possession like 80% of the time. Like you have to figure out a different way of playing. And when you joined Spezia, I was like, wow, can you imagine going from Vincenzo Italiano to Thiago Motta? Like talk about disappointing. But he's actually been pretty good, and I can't figure it out. Like I was like, oh, okay, like he's being pragmatic. He knows how to be a vertical. He's like, you know what, Milan, you take possession. We're just going to try to like use our other weapons, actually look at what we have and maybe try to be a little bit clever on it. And hold on a second, Theo Hernandez is your point of like, attacking play. So I'm going to put a player on there to stop him or to make him have to think twice about what he can do. And again, really smart. It's like he had really studied Milan, really tried to figure out where the weaknesses are. And I do want to talk about the boy that he did put, which is Antics. And he played him sort of in front of Theo Hernandez on the right-hand side, only because he's born on the same day as me and because Milan really, really wanted to buy him. They had scouted him for a while. He had gone to Toulouse. He actually, when he was 1 year old, he was involved in a car crash and nearly passed away. But like as a miracle, he managed to survive that, went on to become a football player, obviously. And one that was like, played as a striker and then through the middle. And then now we see him taking on different roles. And I think he has a lot of potential. And I'm happy for Spezia that they're the ones that got him right now. But I just wanted to say that good on Thiago Motta for sort of, endorsing the more pragmatic style of coaching.
I think that leads us nicely to, while a siren goes off in the background of our living.
I do worry about Brighton because there's always a siren in the background. What's happening over there?
This is why I need to get my new flat, Mina, so I'm not right in the middle where these sirens seem to go all day long. I think that leads us on nicely to any other sort of bits and pieces from this week that we were interested in. I've got one that I have to talk about, which is Mattia Destro's scoring a goal with a water bottle in his hand in a wild game, by the way, between Genoa and Verona. Genoa, who were just bought out by American owners. They went 2-0 down, went 3-2 up, ended up drawing 3-3. But Destro's third goal, the one that put Genoa 3-2 up, he's holding a bottle of water, which... it's late in the game. It's about the 85th minute. He obviously had just gone for a drink and then the attack started and he's like, well, don't know what I'm going to do with this now. He said it. He's like, I had it in my hand, didn't know where to put it. So I just kept holding on to it. And it put me in mind of those ridiculous moments you end up in life where like you sort of things start happening around you and you react and like you're not properly prepared. And what it actually put me in mind of, I don't know if you remember this, was there was a BBC TV presenter, I think it was Simon McCoy, but I'm not sure, who was presenting the news like live on TV. And somehow, instead of an iPad in his hands, he wound up with like a full ream of printer paper. So he's there.
Really?
It's on YouTube and it's brilliant. He's there presenting the news and he's just holding printer paper.
Do you think he was about to
So that's what I think of.
Do you think he was about to fill the printer and then just thought, oh, I have to be live on TV now?
Well, because I think genuinely, because like they quite often do those shots where like the presenter is a standing shot where like they're holding like their tablets, and I think he was supposed to be holding his tablet and somehow just wound up picking up. Honestly, if you haven't seen it,
that's like my dad's version of a tablet.
It's on YouTube and it's so surreal. But that's what I thought of when Destro was there clutching his bottle of water as he scored a goal. A really good goal, by the way, to make it 3-2.
That was a bonkers game. Well, what do you think of Igor Tudor, just quickly? Do you think that he could do something for Verona?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think I said this last week. He's sort of the salvation expert and he's coming a bit early for salvation. I don't know. We'll see.
I do like that they showed that mentality at the end to get the third goal,
Yeah, it was, this was really a bonkers game. And it came right off the back of the Inter game. It just, was a bit breathless, like constantly this weekend and constantly all this season. This has definitely not been a season for defensive purists, but it has been a season for, if you like, football games that look like pinball. Sometimes that's what we've been getting in Serie A this season. It's been really, really entertaining, and I do think I don't want to say this in a way that's disparaging, because I don't actually think it in a disparaging way. The quality has been uneven. There's been uneven quality in some of these games, but there's also been some bloody brilliant goals in amongst all these goals, and there has just been a shift in. And I was like, if you've listened to us do any shows before over the last couple of years, you would have heard me and Mina saying this. Like, Italian football has been quite attacking and high scoring for a while. But this season, it really feels like we're off the deep end. Like, we've gone through into something just really, really nonstop. And Genoa and Verona are definitely buying into that this weekend.
Yeah, but it is worrying me because Opta released their skill, some of the statistics basically, and it's obviously Serie A is the highest scoring league right now with 3.2 goals a game. And when you compare that to La Liga, it's hugely, massively more. We're above the Bundesliga at 2.98. I do worry about the level of defending. Some of the goals that Roma conceded, some of the goals that Juventus conceded, like, it's really hideous play. And I'm talking about two big teams. I'm not even mentioning like the kind of goals that Salernitana concedes, So I do wonder whether there is a lost art there. And these things always make me worry. I'm not a defensive purist, but I do like balance. And that is potentially why I'm going to tell you that Fiorentina played Udinese and they got 1-0. And it was the most hideous 1-0 you can imagine, because Udinese probably should have won that match in the second half. But boy, do I love a team that cling on. And so I do really just want to rate Italiano for being able to play a vast array of football. Sometimes it's pretty, sometimes it's deathly awful to watch. But either way, if you're getting the points, that I guess that's all that matters, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Was there any other topics you wanted to get to, Mina, before we say goodbye for this week?
No, I'm all good. I think I've mentioned everything. It was just nice to chat to you.
There will be an extra episode coming up on Thursday or Friday this week of our mailbags, so do check back in for that. Also, we are now on Podbean, so check out the excellent Podbean app and subscribe on there if you aren't doing that already. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at Nicky Bandini, at Mina Rizuki, and the podcast itself is at Serie A Chron Pod. Make sure you subscribe and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. And to help the show, please consider making a contribution at serieachronicles.com/supporter. We will be back, as I say, on Thursday or Friday with our mailbag episode. And then on Monday, Tuesday next week, we record on Monday, sorry. We will be out on Tuesday next week with the next full installment, looking back over the weekend's action. But for now, Mina, it was lovely to hang out.
Lovely to speak to you as always.
And we'll see you next week.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.